Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rebecca Milliman, and I am the Prevention and Education Manager at the Harborview Abuse and Trauma Center in Seattle, Washington. Welcome to our webinar today on athletes as leaders. I want to start by taking a moment to acknowledge the land that I occupy and live on. So I'm in the Seattle area, which sits on the traditional land of the coastal Salish nations, which includes the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Muckleshoot, which, like many tribal lands, were stolen through broken treaties, violence, and genocide. I highly recommend that folks research the traditional land that you occupy by researching the tribes and learn how you can support their current advocacy efforts. And I also encourage you to donate to your local tribe or your local Indigenous-led organization. I now want to take a minute to introduce my amazing team and co-presenters today. So I want to start with Disney Williams. So I have known Disney for several years. When I met Disney, she was in California, and she was what we call a mentor, someone who was mentoring teams, and also a violence prevention advocate. So also coordinating efforts in their community to implement athletes as leaders with several local teams. Since then, Disney has relocated back to her home in Alaska. And Disney, hello.
Hey everybody, I would just like to take a moment to say Gunas Chish and Indoikism to everybody who came, and also to the Akwan and Takuquan, whose territory I am currently Zooming from. Thanks.
Thanks, Disney. Next, I want to introduce Elise Morris. So Elise is someone who I have known since she was in high school as a student athlete who went through this program. And from pretty much the moment I met Elise, I knew that they were a superstar, and have just truly enjoyed working with Elise since being an athlete participant, but then very quickly went on to take several leadership positions in high school, working to prevent sexual violence and create a safer community in the school. Has since gone off to college and has kept in touch and has interned with me for, is it 3 summers now, Elise, I think? So I'm gonna hand it over to you to say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm Zooming from Bozeman, Montana, which is the land of the Absaloka, Cheyenne, and Salish Kootenai land. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here. And last but not least, I want to introduce Monica Schell. Monica and I actually met many years ago when Monica was also a high school student, and has literally been working in the field of sexual assault prevention ever since then, and has done incredible revolutionary work in high school, in college, and then recently went to graduate school and earned her a Master of Social Work just a couple weeks ago. And I honestly had the privilege of having Monica as my practicum student, and after Monica graduated, has continued to work with me on various initiatives that we are working on with comprehensive sexual health education, as well as the Athletes as Leaders program. Hello, Monica.
Hi, everyone. I'm also in Seattle with Rebecca.
Great. Well, again, I want to just say that I really appreciate folks being here today. We're excited to bring to you the Athletes as Leaders program, as well as, for those of you who have been involved with this program for several years, tell you about some of the updates that we just recently made. So this is your author team that you're looking at right here, and it's such an honor and privilege to co-present with you all today. So I'm going to hand it over to Disney to do a poll.
All right, so for our first poll today, we'd like to get to know everyone's experience level. So are you very experienced with athletes as leaders and or coaching boys into men? Are you somewhat experienced with athletes as leaders and or coaching boys into men? Are you new to coaching boys and men and athletes as leaders, but experienced with violence prevention work? Or are you new to it all and excited to learn? So if we could just take a couple minutes here and let us know what your experience level is.
I'm gonna let it run for like 5 more seconds. So far, most people have answered. Okay, we have 95% votes, so I'm just gonna end it now.
All right, so it looks like we have a few people who are very experienced with both programs, quite a few people, 35%, who are somewhat experienced with both athletes as leaders and coaching boys and men. And then we have 38% who are new to the program but experienced with violence prevention work, and then about 20% who are new to it all but very excited to learn. So thank you all for participating in the first poll.
I wanted to talk briefly about the history of this program. So this program was created locally in Seattle in 2015, where I was managing a comprehensive sexual assault prevention project at a local high school. The school principal expressed interest in doing coaching boys into men. And for those of you who are not familiar with coaching boys into men, it is for boys' high school sports teams, and it's an evidence-based program, and it relies on the coach facilitating the program. And the principal's idea was we should do this with every team. And this was a big sports school where athletes tended to hold a lot of social capital and influence in the community. So our immediate thought was, well, what about the girls' teams? So young people of all genders, including non-binary people, girls, and women, should be also central to the conversation. And furthermore, when we're marketing coaching boys into men, we do call it a leadership opportunity for boys' teams. And due to our belief in gender equity and also Title IX requirements, we did need to offer equal opportunities for all genders. So long story short, we got input from a lot of athletes as well as experts in the sexual assault field to create the program under its original name, Student Leaders and Athletic Youth. After we launched it in Seattle and implemented it very widely here, the program did receive a lot of interest from other communities, and we were able to do a small pilot and launch the program nationally in 2016 and do a larger national evaluation in 2017 and 18. So many of the folks who have been involved with developing the program are on the call today, and I just want to acknowledge you. You know who you are. I particularly want to acknowledge Futures Without Violence, the Washington Coalition of Sexual Assault Programs, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, and the University of Pittsburgh for all their help. And again, I want to give a shout out to all the coaches and the mentors and the athletes locally who were involved at the very beginning stages and who helped us provide a lot of valuable input. And lastly, the program is available for free online at athletesasleaders.org.
So the program is all about developing student athletes as leaders. It's a program that encourages athletes to create a safe and supportive community on their teams and at their schools. It's based on research and best practices in sexual assault prevention. We recommend this as a complement to other programs that involve men and boys in active prevention efforts. The boys teams in our community have done the Coaching Boys into Men program, and Athletes as Leaders was created so that women, girls, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people could also have an active voice in creating a safe community. It's best practice to intentionally target all genders because everyone can play a role in preventing violence.
And so I will speak a little bit towards what informed much of the creation of this program. That is like the unique challenges that youth athletes on high school girls teams face and what many of your teams and athletes may also face or be facing currently. As Rebecca mentioned, I was introduced to AAL when I was a youth high school player on a girls soccer team. And so I experienced some of these challenges firsthand. some of the things that I noticed that I became more aware of, especially going through Athletes as Leaders, was blatant discrimination in resources between gendered teams. For example, we had a men's basketball team who would be allotted like shoes like free shoes for every season. They would go to dinners, sponsored dinners after every game. They had better access to locker rooms and gear. They also, throughout our school system, had better choice times for games and practices. So often the girls teams would play at the earlier evening slot and the boys teams would play during the later evening slot. And that was just kind of something that wasn't questioned at my school. That was the way things were. But that resource was differentiated by the gender of the sports team and nothing else. Something else that I experienced or was aware of was the unequal treatment and recognition of teams. So often boys teams would be recognized, whether that was like in morning announcements or on the school newspaper, of their accomplishments. I specifically remember that the men's team had a full front page in the school newspaper for their accomplishment and their season, and we had made it to state, and we got like this tiny little section on the back of the newspaper. And so things like that. Boys often had more freedom in what they could wear. I remember practicing, and the men's track team would be running laps around the track shirtless, and girls didn't have that option. Often the regulation of girls' bodies compared to boys. On our wrestling team, there was this incident, or often the rule was that men could weigh in without wearing their singlet, which benefited their weigh-in time before their wrestling match, whereas the women had to wear both a top and a bottom when they weighed in, which affected their actual weigh-in. And I know that through working with AAL, the girls wrestling team actually petitioned and got that rule to be changed and removed to be more equal treatment later on in their season, which was very cool. Something else that I experienced was rule bending. So many of my male classmates told me that their coach would talk to their teachers to finagle them a passing grade in some way or another so that they could play before an important game so they could still be eligible. I never heard of this happening with female student athletes. As a female student athlete, I was just expected to get the good grades that I needed to be able to play. And I think that all of this comes down to being able to access yourself as an authentic person, an authentic athlete. There's an expectation as a girls player. I remember there was an expectation to not be too feminine, not too masculine, that you had to find this strike somewhere perfectly in the middle. You couldn't be too aggressive, but you also couldn't be seen as weak. And so the reality of this is that there are boxes created for athletes based on gender. And we send young athletes messages that boys and girls are inherently different, and not only in physically, but in how they should act, what they should value, and what they can achieve. And so I think that this is something that shaped me as a youth athlete and is something I still experience in my college career today. And so we wanted to address this by making our program more gender inclusive, because now our question is not solely on how to empower girls, but how to deconstruct these notions of difference between gender. How to be an authentic athlete is the hardest question because it throws away all the scripts and allows young people to look at themselves without any predetermined judgment. And so these messages are not just important for girls, they're universal. And we want to encourage all athletes, regardless of their gender, to consider the social factors that shape their experiences and to discover themselves outside of the rigid boxes that gender has placed on them. And so this is especially true for non-binary athletes. When I was a youth player in high school, there wasn't really space for non-binary athletes to participate in athletics or in programs like these. And so with AAL, we are starting to make that a space and include everyone in becoming a community leader. And in making our program more gender inclusive, we just invite everyone to be a part of building the tools to find their authentic selves, to address harmful structures, and to prevent harm within their own community. So we're excited to be able to share that with you.
Thank you, Elise. I really appreciate you sharing some of your story. So this program really attempts to take a unique approach We do believe that this program is quite different from a lot of the other programs and messaging that has been out there kind of traditionally to aimed at young women and girls to reduce sexual violence. A lot of those tend to be messages such as, don't walk alone at night, travel with a buddy, be assertive in your communication, even, carry pepper spray. There's all kinds of amazing products out there marketed toward women and girls. We know stun guns that are in a little lipstick case and stuff like that. Don't drink, or don't drink too much, or always watch your drink, etc. So what these messages do, as you probably know, is they put the responsibility on the people to protect themselves from being sexually assaulted. So these messages ultimately tend to blame the victim, because the message is kind of like, well, you need to follow all these safety rules to prevent sexual assault. It does not put the responsibility on the person who actually perpetrated the assault. We know from statistics that male identified folks are far more likely to perpetrate sexual assault. And so when we created the program, we were trying to think about athletes on girls' teams specifically, and what is the harm that they may be causing, and how can we prevent it? So these include some of the more normalized forms of sexual assault and harassment and harm. So we're talking about things such as body shaming, harassment and bullying, including on social media, rumor spreading, sexual shaming, victim blaming when it comes to survivors of abuse and assault, also reinforcing negative stereotypes about specific genders, about different racial groups, about a person's sexual orientation or ability or disability. And then lastly, this program is unique because it's also, compared to coaching boys into men and maybe other programs, it's a little less dependent on the facilitator of the program. So in this program, we call it the mentor or the coach. It's a little less dependent on them to create the group norms. It really is designed to have the athletes see themselves as the leaders who can take the role of creating the community that they want to see. So when you support each other and there's a really strong supportive environment that's focused on equity, violence is less likely to occur. We encourage the athletes to be role models in the school and to speak up as leaders around these issues.
All right, so let's get into the 2021 updates. So many of the updates were based on feedback from communities implementing athletes as leaders, and also changes that our team thought were important to keep the program current and relevant. So this map actually shows all the locations that offered input, feedback, and consultation for the 2021 update. So thank you all so much. You can even see Juneau up there, where I'm coming from. And in this update, changes include more gender inclusive and intersectional language and themes. Video removal from every lesson. So now there are only 2 videos that are completely optional. Even though some folks said that they loved the videos, many youth especially said that the videos felt outdated. And in addition, not only do many communities lack consistent internet access, especially in rural communities, but also coaches pointed out that it was often difficult to hear or access the videos when they're in an open field or gym. And as a previous mentor, I did have that difficulty in a gym, especially. There's a lot of echo, and sometimes I had to use my phone to use data because the Wi-Fi may not be working right. So yeah, so we took those videos out for more access for more people. And also key messages were added for the mentor at the top of each session. And last but not least, there's new content, including updated goals, which we'll discuss next.
So we're going to briefly pause for 1 second to see if we can get rid of that little text box that keeps popping up on the slides. Let's see if this works.
I think we're good. Perfect. So we can move on to some of the program goals that we brainstormed and kind of realigned for this update. So excuse me, we have some long-term goals for this program. Most importantly, that we want to change the social norms of the school and or athletic community by leveraging the social influence of students and athletes who support the AAL core principles. This is something we will cover in the next slide. We also want to reduce and prevent instances of sexual and gender-based harm, including abuse, assault, bullying, harassment, and victim blaming. We also, most importantly, want to create an environment that's focused on equity. And so some of the short-term goals that we are also focused on are to increase gender equitable attitudes. These were shown in the 2018 national evaluation. We will also go over these a little bit later, but these have been proven that these short-term goals have been proven to be helped when going through the Athletes as Leaders program, including an increased sense of leadership and individuality as a team. Oh, I'm sorry, leadership individually and as a team. We also want to increase connection to and cohesion within community. We want to create a sense of inclusion, support, and belonging for people of all gender identities, racial identities, sexual orientations, abilities, and other marginalized identities. We want to increase empathy and concern for how one's actions affect others, increase willingness to intervene on behalf of the common good, and understand the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationship behaviors, as well as increase caring behaviors and decrease harmful behaviors. So those are just a brief summary of the program goals that we are hoping that we can achieve within your community through this program.
So these are the core principles that we believe all schools and organizations want for their community members. We encourage student athletes to model and promote these as social norms with their peers. In this program, we encourage health and safety, an inclusive and welcoming community, empathy, consent, gender and racial equity, and youth leadership.
So Athletes as Leaders, it is a team effort and it requires partnerships among mentors, athletes, advocates, and coaches. So mentors build relationships and mentor teams. They also facilitate the Athletes as Leaders sessions with athletes. Athletes set team norms, and some teams may even have leaders who help lead weekly discussions with the mentor. Advocates are violence prevention professionals, content experts. They build key relationships and coordinate the program. And coaches reinforce key messages and connect with the parents. Sometimes, like myself, you may have to play multiple roles. When I implemented Athletes as Leaders, I was both the advocate and mentor. Some coaches can also be mentors, and if an athlete has been through the Athletes as Leaders program during a previous season, they can also be a mentor. So we're going to do another poll, and in this next poll, we'd like to get a sense for what your role will be in a relation to the Athletes as Leaders program. Are you the mentor, athlete, coach, or advocate? If you're something else, feel free to pop that in the chat. And we'll take a few, probably about a minute here to allow people to answer the poll question. All right, so I think we'll probably wrap it up here pretty soon. If you haven't answered the poll question, it is, what is your potential role in relation to Athletes as Leaders?
Okay, I'll give it like 5 more seconds. We have like 90% of the votes.
Great, so we actually have 2% athletes here, which is awesome. 17% are mentors, 10% are coaches, and 84% are advocates. we also have about 5% of people who are something other than the 4 listed there. So if you are something else, feel free to pop in the chat if you would like to. If you are a mentor or you need to find a mentor, we do have some guidelines, which we'll link in the chat, just around finding folks who would be a good fit. So when identifying a mentor to facilitate the program with athletes, there are some characteristics, skills, and attributes to consider. Some ideal factors and questions to ask include if the prospective mentor is female identified, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. So mentors need to be aware of their own personal experiences and how they relate to the topics, such as sexual assault, relationship abuse, shaming, body image, and gender stereotypes. Women, non-binary folks, gender non-conforming people, and individuals who have been raised as girls may be more comfortable discussing these topics due to a deeper understanding of these issues. And we also recognize many girls teams have male identified coaches. So in these cases, you may consider partnering with another individual to mentor the team. Another question to ask is, are they near peers? So high school athletes have reported wanting to hear from near peers, which generally means someone a little bit closer to them within about 10 years of age. Is the person well trained? So ideally, facilitators have completed education or training related to sexual assault, dating violence, primary prevention, feminism or women's studies, and anti-oppression. And while advanced training is not required, it is recommended that the mentors have a passion for preventing violence and a willingness to learn. Also, the athletes as leaders training and review of the facilitation guide for mentors is essential. And skills and experience, such as the ability to assess where the athletes are in their learning journeys and ability to adapt sessions without losing the key messages. Do they have an open mind? Are they active listeners? Do they respect the leadership and opinions of youth? Experience working with teams, facilitating groups, public speaking, and knowledge of sports culture is also a major plus. Also, do they reflect the diverse identities of the team or school? Consider mentors who reflect the different identities and backgrounds of the team. It's especially important to represent the diversity of the teams and school population, including those from underrepresented groups. Can the person commit to 20 minutes a week for the entire season, including travel time, prep time, and maybe even debriefing with an advocate? And are they interested in building relationships? And it's okay if your chosen mentor doesn't stack up to all these guidelines, as long as they are passionate about creating a safe and respectful community for all people. If that person is passionate about this, you can have a very successful program. Athletes as Leaders also has easy to follow scripts for facilitation, and we also have optional video resources. So who can be a mentor? They can be sexual assault prevention advocates, domestic violence prevention advocates, high school alumni and former athletes, college athletes. So this could be an internship, university and graduate students majoring in women's studies, sociology, sports psychology, social work, health education, public health, or other related fields, interns and practicum students, head coaches or assistant coaches, team captains, and current athletes. But again, ideally the athletes have been through the program in a previous season, or they tend to be natural leaders.
And we just got a question that I'll answer quickly here. So this person says they're introducing the program to the school. Do I also have to be a mentor, or do I train the mentor? And again, you can decide what's best for your community, for the team, based on whatever your role and capacity is. I think all the things that Disney just spent time talking about are really important to consider, because at the end of the day, you want your mentors to be someone who is credible, who is relevant, who they can relate to, who they can look up to, and also someone that has maybe some deeper and more personal experiences with some of the topics we cover. So hopefully that will become a little bit more clear too as we discuss next more about the specific content. So I just wanted to make it really clear to everyone that this program is free. So there is no cost associated, and it's all available online at athletesasleaders.org. And here's a screenshot of our website, so you can see at the top, we have it organized by role. So if you're the advocate, or if you're the mentor, or if you're a coach or an athlete, there are resources for you. We even have step-by-step guides that walk you through the process of starting this up in your community, how to get it started, how to maybe approach a coach or an athletic director with the idea of starting this in your community. We also do have trainings. So because we can't be everywhere because of our capacity, but also because of this pandemic, we are not able to do a lot of in-person training. So we tried to put as many resources as we could on the website, including today's webinar, which will be recorded and on the website later. We also have evaluation tools and policy recommendations. So check it out at athletesasleaders.org.
Perfect. So now we're going to move on and talk about the program itself. So the structure of the program is designed to fit into one sports season. So the program session happens once a week, and we can move on to that next slide to show kind of more of the structure here. So it happens once a week, and each session is designed to take only 20 minutes. It's meant to be done during a team's practice time. So for me, when I was in high school, we ended practice 20 minutes early and reconvened to do 20 minutes of Athletes as Leaders once a week on a Monday. And this was shown, we were able to model that the coaches commit some of our actual practice time to the curriculum to show its importance, and that this is a priority within our community. The session itself, we would meet, and we would start with a warm up. So it was a quick way to introduce the topic. This used to be a video. We now took out the videos. They are optional, but now we are doing more of an introduction, whether through that's an example or just a debrief of what the topic is about. Then we jump into a workout. So we have a facilitated discussion about the topic and or video. There are several key discussion points here for the mentor to say if the athletes have not already said them. The discussion questions should prompt athletes into a deeper dive into this topic, but the key points, the key discussion points are something that the coach can bring up if it didn't naturally occur. Then we transition into the cool down. And here, this is a space for athletes to come up with new ideas and team expectations during what we call the team talk. And these are new social norms that the team wants to implement for themselves and for their community, for them to think about what they can do to address the issue of the session at hand. And where that can show up, whether that's at practice, games, school, or within the community. So again, this is something that we hopefully can accomplish in 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, it goes by pretty quickly. And the script itself is something that is given each time for the warm up, workout, and cool down. So it's well planned out. And if you can follow the script, then it's pretty easy. And so now we're going to jump into the actual content. So we have 10 sessions. Each session is a specific topic. And here for session 1, this is a time for teams to establish the environment that they want to be in for the rest of the sessions and the rest of their season, and kind of covering the rest of the topics. Here are key messages are that athletes have a key role in helping to create a sense of safety, welcoming, and belonging for all people in the community, and that this type of community benefits everyone. And that we are also going to create this type of space here during the sessions and hopefully in our larger community as well. And now we're going to jump into session 2.
So session 2 is understanding privilege and oppression. In the session, athletes discuss how all human beings experience different levels of privilege and oppression based on identities such as gender, race and ethnicity, and sexual orientation, just to name a few. Athletes take part in an activity that explores individual privilege and examine why some folks may not be able to notice their own privilege or recognize the oppression that others experience. The 3 key messages of this session is, number 1, oppression occurs at all levels of society and causes inequality. 2, our identities impact our experiences in life. 3, we need to understand our own identities and experiences and not make assumptions about others. Session 2 also has an optional YouTube video created by Francesca Ramsey and Kat Black. It's called Sometimes You're a Caterpillar. And in this video, a snail and a caterpillar discuss how they each experience life differently. Spoiler alert, one has to navigate life with a shell and the other has to buy multiple pairs of shoes. And the video is optional.
In the garden, there's a caterpillar and a snail, and they're basically best friends. They hang out 24/7. They do dinner, movie nights, crafts. Oh, and they're like really into cosplay on top of like whatever else caterpillars and snails do, like eat leaves or something. Anyways, one day they're on their way to a party that's right outside the garden, and they have to go through the fence to get there. So the caterpillar goes right through, but the snail is stuck. Her shell is just too big and it won't fit under the wire. So she's like, crap, I can't get through. Maybe like, can you lift up the wire, or maybe we can build a little bridge or something? And the caterpillar's like, dude, just go under. But she can't. There's just no way that the shell is gonna fit. And the caterpillar's like, go under, come on, we're gonna be late and I'm trying to hook up with that super cute ladybug. But it's not happening. The shell will not fit under the wire. And at this point, Snail's getting kind of frustrated because it's not like she doesn't want to go to the party, but for some reason, Caterpillar just isn't getting it. Yeah, it's not that easy for me. I just can't crawl under the fence like you can, so I would really appreciate your help here. Maybe we can like go a different way, and this just like sets the caterpillar off. What the heck? Just because I can crawl under stuff doesn't mean that I have it easy. Do you even know what it's like to have 16 feet? You don't, because finding shoes is a complete nightmare. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not saying you have it easy. I'm just saying I can't go under the fence because of my shell. That's it. I have a shell and you don't. And there's some stuff that's easier for you that's harder for me. Just like I don't know jack about finding shoes because I don't have feet. Caterpillar thinks about this for a second and realizes the snail is right. I mean, he's never had to think about shells or slimy trails, and that's a privilege that the snail has never had because she has to think about that stuff all the time. That's part of being a snail. And it's kind of like that for everyone, right? I mean, we all have our own struggles and challenges, and some of them are small and some of them are huge and really unfair and beyond our control. And a lot of the time, it can be hard to see what someone else deals with because you've never been in their shoes or shell. Like maybe you're gay or trans, have a disability or different religion, or of course the obvious one, you're a member of a different race. I don't know what it's like to be you, and you don't know what it's like to be me. So it's really important to stop and try and see the other side so we can help each other overcome those obstacles together. It's like sometimes you're the snail and sometimes you're the caterpillar. Oh yeah, okay, so then the snail and the caterpillar figured out that if they went to the other side of the garden, they could get through a little break in the fence. And while it took a little longer to get to the party, they did the trip together, which is what made it so great. So they got to the party, the caterpillar hooked up with the ladybug, snail taught everyone how to do the wobble, and the party was everything. The end. This video was illustrated by the very talented and lovely Kat Black and written and narrated by yours truly, Cheska Lee. Please check out Kat's channel and don't forget to subscribe. Bye!
Okay, so the next session is session 3. And this one is called Challenging Harmful Stereotypes. So in this session, we continue the conversation that was started in session 2 on privilege and oppression. And we encourage athletes to challenge stereotypes and labels that are common in society and get a little bit more specific with examples that are related to gender and race. So the key messages for this lesson are that many people have learned harmful stereotypes about specific groups of people that we need to unlearn. And we can help create a community that is safe and welcoming for all people. So that phrase keeps coming up throughout the whole program, that they should play an active role as leaders to create a safe and welcoming community for all people. And again, this one is a little bit more focused on different genders and racial identities. The session after that is session 4, and that again kind of continues this conversation that's been started in 2 and 3. So in this session, which is called Addressing Misinformation and Bias, the athletes envision a safe and welcoming community that they want to help create together. And the discussion goes a little bit deeper into examples about people with disabilities and about the LGBTQ plus community, which are 2 groups who have historically been unwelcomed in sports. The key messages for this lesson include that many people have received misinformation about specific groups of people, and we need to educate ourselves to avoid bias. And then we can help create a community that is safe and welcoming for all people, including all sexual orientations and abilities and disabilities.
So in session 5, Unpacking Beauty Standards, athletes discuss how unrealistic beauty standards in society contribute to negative stereotypes, body image issues, lack of confidence, and so on. The athletes are encouraged to consider positive characteristics about themselves and others that don't center around one's appearance. So the key messages in this session are: there's no right or wrong way to have a body. No one should feel pressured to look or present in a certain way, and avoid making comments about people's bodies. So this is a question that we ask the athletes during the team talk in session 5. We want you to think about this question and answer it in the chat if you would, and I can read out a few of the responses we get. So the question is, what beauty standards would you like to unlearn? And I'll just read out a few of these. Women shouldn't have body hair. Skinny equals healthy. Thin is attractive and thick is not. Women's bodies have to be tiny and petite. Size is important. Good hair, quote unquote. Women need to wear makeup. That I have to be skinny to be pretty. Big is good for men and bad for women. Outward appearance, women need to be slim. Yeah, there's definitely a couple of themes happening. Clothing determines beauty. Women should behave a certain way. Yeah, these were good, thank you. I should straighten my hair, that's a good one. Sorry, go ahead to the next slide. But keep these coming, these are really interesting.
Sorry, I got distracted reading it. There's so many good answers out there, and so many beauty standards. So here we're moving on to session 6. In this session, we address how shaming and rumor spreading creates an unsafe community for everyone and disempowers people from making sexual or intimate choices that are right for them. And so the key messages here in session 6 that we're trying to capitalize on are that every person has the right to decide if, when, and with whom and how they engage in consensual, intimate, or sexual behavior. It's also, we want to share that it's not okay to spread rumors or shame people for their sexual or intimate behavior, and it's not okay to blame people for the assault or abuse that they experience. So that's a quick one, but we'll move on to session 7.
So in session 7, promoting consent, the athletes discuss the importance of consent in sexual experiences and in everyday life. The athletes think through when it's appropriate to ask for consent and how they can show respect for other people when they say no. The key messages in this session are: consent is important in everyday life. Practicing consent can prevent harm. And practicing consent shows care and concern for another person. In session 7, there's also an optional video called Consent is Everything that the athletes can watch. Rebecca and I actually know the person who created this video. His name is Arjur, and we played a very small role in having this be created.
I asked for consent very forwardly.
Go ahead.
Because that's how I wish people would do it to me. So I just say like, hey, can I give you a hug? Or hey, can we do this?
Hey, is it all right if I hug you?
I hope you can come, but there's no pressure at all.
Hey, is this okay?
I wish people asked for consent to share my personal information or details about me when they just did normal everyday things.
And they want to hug me or touch my hair or touch my nails.
When they take photos.
When you're dumping a lot of intense emotional information or other intense stuff when you're talking to your friends.
The most looked over part of consent is the non-sexual consent that we see in everyday lives.
And making boundaries clear to those who are in your direct or distant family, because even if it's your uncle, your grandparents, whoever, they can still ask for consent and you can still accept or deny their offer.
Consent can be revoked at any point, regardless if you are in a relationship with that person or if you've said yes to that person before.
Power and privilege comes to role in consent is that it creates insecurities within someone's decision, whether to say no or to say yes.
People who have a lot of power tend to put underprivileged people into situations where they just are unable to express general consent for a lot of different things.
If you hold a position of power, it's your responsibility to be making sure that you're always getting true consent and not using any coercion to get people to do what you want them to do.
Nonverbal consent is something that would be really hard to effectively give without verbalizing it at least once.
There is a lot of room for misinterpretations or miscommunications, so when in doubt, I think it's always best to be verbal.
It's also important to remember that not everyone communicates with words, so just communicate with people the way that they're comfortable with and able to.
When people ask for my consent for non-sexual things, it actually makes me feel very respected and like my thoughts and opinions matter.
It A, reaffirms that they respect me, and B, reaffirms that they respect my boundaries if I choose to say yes or no to them.
Creates a more safer environment within what you may be dealing with within a situation.
It's just always a good reminder to make sure that I'm always asking for consent in situations where it's needed.
I pledge to implement my knowledge of consent into a classroom environment.
I pledge to ask for consent before posting any photos or videos of people.
I pledge to hold the people in my life accountable when it comes to consent, along with myself, and I pledge to always do what I can to support survivors and victims.
When do you pledge to ask for consent?
Great video. So next we're going to move on to session 8, which is fostering healthy relationships. And in the session, athletes explore the meaning of healthy relationships and the importance of taking responsibility for their own behavior and actions in romantic partnerships and even friendships and among teammates. The athletes discuss how they can promote equality across their relationships and talk about ways they can help friends who are being harmed or causing harm. The key messages in this session are: 1, all healthy relationships require equal partnerships, communication, and boundaries. 2, everyone has a right to feel safe and be treated with respect in all relationships. And 3, you are responsible for your own behavior and not others' behaviors. So here is another example of an activity that we do during the team talk in session 8. And if you feel comfortable, I invite you all to go into the chat bar and fill in the blank. In relationships, everyone deserves blank. So the first one, everyone deserves respect, trust, safety, respect, consideration, dignity, to be heard, love and care, empathy, a voice, their own voice, safety, space, freedom to be themselves, recognition, independence, emotional safety, privacy, autonomy, and respect, balance. These are all really good. Proper communication, compromise, and to be heard. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we're almost done. So now we're jumping into session 9, building community. So here we're wrapping up off of all of the topics that we have discussed above, and kind of ending it off that this session basically just touches on the value of a connected community, how it reduces harm, and how athletes can be leaders in creating a cohesive and safe community, which benefits everyone. Here, the key messages are that 1, a safe and welcoming community benefits everyone. 2, that when you see harm, you can speak up or offer support. And when you cause harm, you can apologize and commit to doing better. And lastly, that as a leader, you can demonstrate what it means to treat people with empathy, care, and concern. And I think that'll lead us into our final session. Oh, before we're doing that, we are doing one last quick type into the chat. So a question that we pose in this session to help athletes consider what that looks like for community connectedness. So please feel free to fill in the blank. I feel like I belong when people accept me the way that I am. I feel connected with the people around me. I'm validated for who I am. I feel safe, appreciated, listened to. These are amazing. When my opinion is asked, when my pronouns are respected, when I'm included, when my boundaries are respected and I respect theirs. These are amazing. Others feel safe to share vulnerabilities. I think that's a big one that we try and build in AAL. When people smile and are genuine. I love that. Okay, please feel free to keep putting in your answers into the chat. This is making my day. But okay, I think we'll, just for the sake of time, we'll move on.
So you can imagine, and we appreciate all of you participating today in the chat, you can imagine how powerful this discussion becomes in a team talk when you've got this bonding over these periods of, of 10 to 12 weeks. And we encourage athletes to sit in a circle to really be able to hear and listen to each other and build that community, but also the level of accountability to hold each other accountable to helping with, for example, in the last question, making sure that we all feel like we belong, and not just on this team, but in the larger school community. So lastly, you have to end every single thing you do with youth with a party, right? You always have to end with some kind of celebration. We really hope that you have some funding to get some snacks, because that is super important. And basically in this session, we try to wrap up with very briefly reviewing some of the things that we've talked about this season, but also to celebrate our success. So we have the athletes do a recognition circle and express gratitude toward each other and the team for the process they went through this year. And we also, if you do choose to conduct an evaluation, this is your time to do your post survey. So the key messages from session 10 are today, so previous slide, please. Today, we want to celebrate some of our successes and reflect on what we have learned. Our leadership and work can continue. And then again, if you're conducting the evaluation, the way we pose that to athletes is that we want to understand the impact that this program has had on our team. So this is basically your wrap-up session. And if you have longer than 20 minutes, it is helpful to have a little bit longer for session 1 and session 10. Okay, so next we'll go into the evaluation results. So we were very fortunate to be able to partner with the University of Pittsburgh, Dr. Liz Miller and Summer Miller-Wallfish, who conducted this national evaluation. This was one of our sites, and just a shout out to Red River and Central High School hockey team in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And I don't know if any folks are here today from Grand Forks, but thank you for all your help. They have implemented this program very widely there, I believe with over 20 teams. And so on the next slide, you can see how wide this study, or I shouldn't call it a study, but this evaluation was. So we had 268 athletes go through the program, and they represented 12 different teams in 8 different states. And there, just the limitation of this was that there was no comparison group. So what we did was we looked at the pre-survey results and the post-survey results, and paid attention to, is there any difference between pre and post, and are those differences statistically significant? So on the next slide, you're going to see 3 key areas where we actually did see statistically significant changes, which is pretty huge considering this is only a 10-week program and the sessions are super brief. But athletes actually did have an improved ability to identify abusive behaviors after going through this program. They had an improved belief in gender equity. So there was more belief in gender equitable attitudes. And then lastly, there was a statistically significant increase in their self-image and confidence, particularly around they're seeing themselves as leaders. So some of the questions were, do you feel like you can speak up about issues that you care about and people will listen to you, for example? And so we saw improvement on that from pre to post. I also want to take this opportunity to read you some quotes from athletes who have gone through the program. And Elise, not to put you on the spot, but you were an athlete to go through this program. So if you want to say something brief on the impact it had on you or your team, I would welcome that. But first, I'll share some comments from athletes on girls' teams across the country. So these are some of the quotes they said. One athlete said, "This program made us great leaders in the school and made the school a better social environment." Another athlete said, "I learned it's up to us to change the stereotypes." Another person said, "I think we are all more conscientious about how we treat each other." And then lastly, another athlete said, "I have become a more positive person on and off the court." Elise, do you mind sharing briefly how you felt after going through the program, if you can remember that far back?
No, absolutely. I think that now looking back at the program, being in college, being a collegiate athlete, and training in ways and being connected to a team because I'm living on campus with them. And looking back, a lot has become more intense with soccer. It's become more hands-on, and I'm connected with my team in college in ways that I didn't have the opportunity to do so in high school just because of the environment. But to this day, I have not been in a space as vulnerable as athletes as leaders in a team environment. I think that it really brought something to the table for our team in terms of how we bonded, how we saw each other, the ways that what we began to value in each other. And the spaces that were created through these conversations were conversations that I've never had previously, nor post from athletes as leaders, just being able to talk about insecurities with body image. Being able to tell my teammates that I don't feel comfortable when this happens because it's so normal on the team and I don't know how to speak out about it. Being able to listen to someone else tell me that they feel so empowered when I told them that they had a great game, but I didn't know the value of that until they were able to have a space to show me the ways that they felt empowered, or the ways that they felt best listened to or valued on the team. And so I think that that's conversation that doesn't come up naturally in society nor in a team setting, because it's not considered to be a part of athletics. All these topics like consent isn't considered to be a part of athletics. And so I think to be able to have a space that brings these questions to the table without, in a structured environment, with a positive, with your coach or a mentor, with a team all being there. I think that that's not something that occurs naturally. And so being able to do that through athletes as leaders was a life-changing opportunity for me, and things that I still bring to my college experience. And I wish there was a program for college athletes as well. It's needed. So that's all I'll say. But yeah, thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Elise. It's really great to hear. All these years later, you reflect back on your experience in the program. And then I'm going to share just a couple more quotes. And these are from coaches and mentors. So these are folks, adults who facilitated the program with their athletes, with their team. And one coach and mentor said, "The Athletes as Leaders program helped my team grow in ways I never imagined. The program gave me the tools I needed to advocate for social justice, promote a culture of safety and respect, all while meeting my number one goal as a coach, to build confidence with the athletes on my team." And then lastly, another coach who also mentored her team, and she facilitated the program over her season, at the end reflected and said, "The athletes spoke vigorously about standing up for what's right, not only for them, but for their teammates and their peers." So again, if you are interested in implementing the program and evaluating it, we do have all these resources on the website on the evaluation page. And so you can, use an evaluation that works best for your community and create one, or you can use all the tools that were created by the University of Pittsburgh in our national evaluation, and those are available on our website.
All right, so as we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that the recording and slide deck will be available on our website at athletesasleaders.org. It's in the chat, and we'll pop it in the chat again. If you or anyone you know would like to get trained to facilitate the program, we are offering a Train the Trainer for Mentors through Team Up Washington on July 27th, and we'll put the link in the chat as well. And you can also connect with us. You can send us a message at www.athletesasleaders.org/contact. That will also be linked in the chat. Again, I wanted to say thank you to all of you for showing up and showing interest in preventing violence among athletes on high school girls teams. So Gönöll's Csík, Indoikshism, and thank you.
And at this point, we are going to start answering some of the questions and answers. And for sake of the recording, I'm going to go ahead and stop that, and we'll get to your questions.